Hello and welcome to this special edition of Focus On, where I'll be taking you through some key highlights from the second edition of the Seplat Energy Summit from Abuja. I'm Kenneth Ibomo, and thanks for joining me today. The second edition of the Seplat Energy Summit was themed Global Trends in Energy Transition and the African Perspective. Let's get the ball rolling with a brief chat with the CEO of Seplat Energy, Roger Brown, as he sets the tone.
Delight to launch the brand today. Look, you're right, we've been doing this for a while. Back in 2012 we expanded our gas business, and you're seeing some of the product of that now. But when we looked at the name PETROLEUM Development Company, we didn't think that really reflected where we were. So therefore Seplat Energy was born, and you can see the new branding. Look, our business, the message to everyone is our business is going to get bigger in terms of our energy mix, but it doesn't mean we're going to stop one level of energy. So we have a business on three pillars. First pillar, which is the upstream oil and gas, we're going to continue to do that because it's very big in the communities that we operate, and is a very vital part of the energy mix of Nigeria. Our midstream gas business, what we're going to do in our pillar 2 is expand that midstream processing business, but also move down the value chain. So looking at LPG, which is avoiding firewood for cooking, displacing that, moving down into gas to power, so going to the electricity sector from the hydrocarbon sector, that's pillar 2. And then pillar 3 then is the bridge into renewable energy. And we're seriously looking at that is what type of renewable business we go into. Probably solar is most likely, and we're trying to combine that with the gas to power business alongside the solar business. So Seplat Energy is a wider business into the future. We also need to address not just 2 of the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN set, there's 17 of them, and so therefore the social aspect, the employment for the communities, the healthcare, the education, etc. That's an area that we're working on. We announced today that we would do a Tree for Life, and that is in Q1 next year. We're doing a tree planting business which is going to grow trees throughout Nigeria, and that's going to create employment. It's a carbon sink, so therefore taking carbon in the atmosphere. So it's just a wider business for us.
And it's a bold ambition, no doubt, and just as the Minister of Petroleum Resources noted today, they hope that Seplat can be the poster boy, if you like, for that transition that they would like to see across the rest of corporate Nigeria. But can you speak to the ecosystem that is being built as you take these bold steps to go not just with a focus on several energy sources, but looking beyond that? What do you think potentially we unleash as an ecosystem in terms of creating jobs and diversity?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. Look, for us, first of all, what we want to do more of is public-private partnerships. So with the government's intentions, signed up the Paris Accord, has also gone for the decade of gas, that fully aligns with our strategy. So we want to work with our government partners. The similar type of relationships we have in the Ano gas plant is a 50-50 in corporate joint venture. That's something we will do much more partnerships with the government going forward. Then in terms of our business, it's building out our capabilities in the areas we operate. And you can see if you follow the value chain of energy, obviously oil, a lot of it gets exported, but Nigeria needs to start to create more refineries. Dangote's refinery, you've got Walter Smith's, BUA, etc. So it needs to be wholly insular in refining. We won't necessarily go into refining as us, but certainly our oil could go there. It's building that out. And also then in terms of the energy is, we like the ideas of these business parks, the industrial zones from our areas we operate, and that's something we're going to be driving forward.
In terms of building a sustainable environment, it goes beyond just the environment, so to speak, and climate. It's about creating jobs as well. So again, to the point I asked earlier about what this ecosystem unleashes in terms of changing the environment, but also changing lives.
We have an ecosystem today, right? So we have employment in our communities, we have growth there, we have a number of programs. What this is about is getting bigger. It's scaling up, opportunities to grow, add more assets to our portfolio. But in that, we want to do oil and gas. What we don't want to do is create one pillar of our business and stick with that, right? So we need to build out the gas business. That will create jobs, so gas to power. The problem with the minute within Nigeria, historically, it's an export-import model. And we have to create a domestic model. We can't continue to export oil, import product, create electricity from that, flare gas or export gas. We need to create gas in the market. That's what Seplat's doing. We do 30% gas to power today. That ecosystem will naturally have job implications to it. We're not just creating an export model. And that's the important thing. If you create a domestic model, you will definitely create jobs.
And to declare the summit open, the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Professor Yemi Osibanjo, was represented by Nigeria's Minister of State for Environment, Sharon Ikeazo.
Renewables are key to all people and key to us achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals of providing people with affordable energy, while also enforcing these SDGs. They facilitate access to basic services, they improve human health, enhance incomes and productivity, and promote gender equality and educational opportunities. Renewables will also create new jobs and spawn new industries and can contribute to sustainable urban development. The good news is that many solutions already exist and transitions are already underway and being expanded and scaled up. It is recognized, however, that the pace and scale of transition demands finances, expanded innovations in technologies, business models, and market solutions, and an enabling policy framework to continuously improve the existing options and fill the gaps for a decarbonized energy system by 2050 for us all to have a sustainable future.
Also delivering the keynote address, Nigeria's Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Tim Silva, shared some insight on Nigeria's energy transition plans.
While acknowledging our commitment to net zero as a nation, there is no gainsaying the fact that Nigeria requires fossil fuel as its baseload energy source. This is undoubtedly a major concern for climate activists in developed nations. But the clamor to emphasize only renewable energy as the sole pathway to energy transition is a source of concern for African countries that are still working to achieve baseload industrialization, address energy poverty, and ensure reliable power supply. This is why in Nigeria, we reject the concept of a single pathway to the energy transition. Indeed, we prefer the concept of just energy transition, which takes into cognizance the specific circumstances of each nation in developing the energy transition pathway that best achieves the environmental, social, political, and economic objectives of the transition in that specific nation. Multiple pathways to the energy transition should and must exist in order to ensure that no country is left behind in the process of achieving net zero by 2050.
Now, a major part of the summit was the unveiling of the new name of the company, changing from Seplat Petroleum Development Company PLC to Seplat Energy PLC. The company says the name change is in consonance with global trends in energy transition and aligns with Seplat Energy's renewed focus on the entire value chain with an emphasis on cleaner and more sustainable forms of energy.
This year's summit, as I said earlier on, will be heralding the ideas that Seplat is committed to delivering in energy transition. Let me seize this opportunity to congratulate His Excellency Tim Silva for the passage of PIA. One of the things PIA has done, even for us as a company, is the fact that one singular thing is done in gas. It has revised the DSO regime to the domestic delivery obligation. This is what Seplat has been longing for and we've been pushing for, and we're going to see this really impact very greatly what happens in the energy transition.
Still at the summit, discussions continued with panel discussions focused on driving energy transition in Nigeria. Let's get a cross-section of comments from the participants.
I think if you just take a step back and think about the energy transition or think about net zero, and I think it's important to say it's net zero. And I think, you know, one of the previous guests, Mrs. Ogunbiyi, said that as well. It's not zero fossil, it's net zero. So I think, you know, some people maybe get a bit carried away and think about zero fossil. It's not zero fossil. You know, and if you look at the world's population, the population growth from 8 billion people to 10 billion people by 2050. Look at the number of people today that don't have access to energy, maybe 1 billion people, and you look at economic growth coming up over the next, 30, 40 years. I mean, clearly, the world needs more energy.
If you give the years with which we transited from coal to oil becoming the dominant fuel, it's about 160 years. And today, Nigeria is very rich in gas, if I bring it back home. And if we want to transit successfully as a country, then we must transit our destination fuel, as said by the Minister of Science and Technology, should be gas. But this cannot happen if we sit down and continue to have the conversation without doing something. Because when it went from coal to oil, we did nothing, and we were forced to follow the oil trajectory. Now, if it moves from oil to renewable, we will also be pushed to focus on renewable and abandon our natural God-given resources.
If we are going to achieve it, you need financing. The Nigerian capital markets, while very deep and liquid, is not going to be able to do that financing by itself. So we need to come up with really very innovative ways to achieve that kind of financing. One of them is through partnerships. The Nigerian Stock Exchange has worked actively with Seplat Energy over the years. We're very glad that they raised capital on our platform on the debt side and on the equity side in partnership with the London Stock Exchange Group. That shows the kind of partnership that can be achieved to raise capital, tapping into global financing streams. If you look at 2020, about $750 billion was raised for sustainability, social, and green bonds. And this year it is estimated to be about $1 trillion. So there are funds out there that are targeted to these types of investments, and we just need to tap into them.
Moderating the panel earlier, Wabote, a former vice president and treasurer of the World Bank, and also an independent non-executive director of Seplat Energy, shared her 2 cents on the theme of the day.
Well, I think first and foremost, we must commend Seplat Energy for hosting the summit, Energy Summit, 2 years in a row. Because at the end of the day, one thing that's important is understanding what we need to do as individuals, what we need to do as corporates, what we need to do as governments as we think about the pathway to net zero. More importantly, for developing countries, for Africa, for Nigeria, even more important to think about a holistic strategy where you address issues of poverty at the same time as leveraging the opportunities that climate provides. I say this, for example, I mean, if I think of the over 765 million people who have no access to energy, 70% of them at least are from Africa. And energy transforms lives. It powers a nation. There is a real opportunity to use the new clean energy sources to tackle this. It allows you to decentralize, it allows you to reach the rural areas, because many of those who are poverty poor are in the rural areas. There's also a recognition that we must think about it in terms of how do you finance it. The CEO of the group CEO of the Nigerian Exchange Group today said to power homes in Nigeria that we'll probably need about $400 billion. So it's not just about the energy sources, it's not just about what the industry experts do, it's how do we structure financing. So our local capital markets are important, partnerships around the world are important, making sure that we leverage local capital, that we leverage public sector capital so that we can bring in more resources is also very, very important. Very critical is the timing of this Seplat Energy Summit. It's 3 weeks before COP26. COP26 is an opportunity for all the parties to review where things are and negotiate how we can move forward in a way that meets everybody's needs. And for me, what is the starting point has to be that there is an agreement that we need to keep global warming at below 1.5 degrees centigrade. Yet, what the panel on climate change, the Intergovernmental Panel, came up with last month in September was essentially that if we go on the basis of what has been submitted as national contributions today, that we will not be anywhere close to 1.5 degrees, below 1.5 degrees centigrade, but we'll be at 2.7 degrees centigrade. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. So you need technology, you need innovation, you need R&D, you need the corporate sector being on board in this. And so I'm actually impressed with what Nigeria is doing. The executive secretary of the Nigerian Content Development and Monitoring Board talked about a holistic strategy for how they're supporting renewables coming on board. He talked about what they're doing to move most of our domestic consumption of energy, which is charcoal, kerosene, to liquefied gas. That was, for me, fascinating.
And at the press conference to wind down the proceedings, the chairman and co-founder of Seplat Energy, Dr. ABC ORJIAKO, shared some parting words.
The right mix of energy that will mitigate all of the negative things that human existence is doing in the world while still providing solution to what the world requires, energy. From our perspective, today you heard from the CEO, our purpose is to deliver sustainable energy solution to the society. That's why we exist, essentially. So any business we are doing must be aligned to this. Our vision is transformation of life through energy. So fossil fuels will remain a part of that mix. But what then happens is that as you then increase your gas business, our midstream business, you would have heard that we have been very active in the midstream space far back as 2012. So when we say that we are delivering 30% of gas to power, it is not something we did by chance. It's something that we made deliberate efforts and we planned and we have executed. That's what we have seen today. So are we going to leave fossil fuel? No. But as we continue to increase and add gas, which is cleaner, you are going to be seeing that when you put it in terms of percentages, you see that the gas contribution will continue to rise. That is because a lot more investment is going there. Now, on renewable, there are various types of renewable energy. But what we are saying is that we are not going to put the other energy solutions on hold until you arrive at the destination for renewable energy. But what we are saying is that the energy value chain is quite wide. What we're saying is that the universe requires cleaner forms. Therefore, renewable energy of all forms are important. But we take one step at a time.
And that's all from the second edition of the Seplat Energy Summit as we put the spotlight on global trends in energy transition and the African perspective. I'm Kenneth Igbomo. Enjoy the rest of your day.